This talk is a little bit of like a personal expose. Some might say that this is what I wish I was told when I became a devil. Others might say this is what I wish I was told when I betrayed my engineering class. Before I became a DevOps, that's right. So here's some interesting statistics out of a recent survey that came out only a couple months ago. So in high-performing organizations survey of people that are not in management or team leadership positions, 51% of employees feel that management or people in team leadership positions hinder more than they actually help. 44% believe that their bosses don't clearly communicate the purpose or the direction of what their team is. 77% don't consider organizational capacity when they're rolling out new initiatives. So basically, they don't give a fuck about the workload of the people that are actually doing that work. And 64% believe that their managers don't set and maintain useful policies. Right. That's in high-performing organizations. What about low-performing organizations? Holy crap. Basically, there are a lot of really, really unhappy people. And this is a really big problem because we spend a very significant portion of our work lives, or of our lives at work. So I think it's, I believe that it's a manager's responsibility to make the friendliest, happiest work environment possible for the people that are working for them. So I fundamentally believe that there are only two responsibilities of any manager. This is it. It doesn't matter what job you're in, whether you're in IT, engineering, medicine, government. You have to remove roadblocks from people in the team and reduce interruptions. That's it. That's the success. That's the key to success of being a manager. I can finish it.
What about getting the right people?
We can talk about that later.
But that's removing roadblocks.
It's more important as a manager to eliminate the negatives within your team than it is for accentuating the positives. The negatives actually drag the team down far more than anything that you can accentuate on the positive side. It doesn't matter what sort of positive improvements you're making. If there's some negative influence within the team, it's going to drag the performance down. So, first key point to making this happen: listening. Sounds ridiculous. In fact, it's the most important thing in any sort of relationship, whether it be interpersonal or private life, work setting. Listening is the most important thing. Typical modern management practices that seem to be bestowed on us in sort of engineering settings is that managers are smart, workers are dumb.
I really hope you don't think
And a lot of this thinking came out of the Industrial Revolution, where you have large-scale production lines, typified by people like Henry Ford, who believe that humans, people in our systems, are just replaceable cogs. And the people that are running the system know better than the people that are at the coalface. So that worked out really well, especially in the automotive industry as well. Again, you can just replaceable cogs, right? Look at Detroit, for example. There's a whole bunch of other factors there, but it's an interesting anecdote. People are your biggest asset, and you are absolutely losing out if you're not actually listening to the people in the team. The people in your team know what's happening much better than you do. You don't have all of the answers, and you're lying to yourself if you think you do. So ask the people in your team, ask for feedback, and most importantly, listen to it. All right, next point, empathy. And once you're actually listening to people, you need to be able to empathize with their particular situation. So there's this sort of common thread that you hear a lot in sort of management courses and whatnot, that you want to treat others as you want to be treated.
Jesus.
I know, it's crazy talk, right? And you see that encoded in. It's basically the root thing of every single religion in the world. Right? It's about treating others as you yourself want to be treated. So how does that factor into things like race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, class? Being in management, one might actually, it might be reasonable to assert that I'm in an upper class when it comes to the IT power structures overall. So if I want to be, if I want to treat other people like I'm being treated, then I really need to be able to empathize with them to be able to take those particular things into account. So we have this whole thing of treat others as you want to be treated. It's actually most important is to treat others as they want to be treated. You need to be able to empathize with them in the first place to be able to do that. The other interesting anecdote here is the childhood experiences don't justify behaviour of people in the team. However, they do go a long way to explain it. Diversity. So this is the really key point. This is something that I actually personally fail on, especially in the way that I sort of, led and built a team over the last few years. So I fundamentally believe that you get better solutions by having more diverse opinions. So to do that, you need to have people from different racial backgrounds, different religions, different genders, different sexual orientations, classes. If you can take those things into account, you can come to a better solution overall. And the most important thing here is to actually not fear conflict at all. This is something that most new managers are very, very fearful of. They're very conflict averse. When they come into a new position, and they don't want to rock the boat too much, and they don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. And so they see any sort of conflict within the team as being something that's going to rock that boat and it's going to be unproductive. But the conflict is actually massively important. In fact, you need to embrace it. And this is one of the most difficult things to do when you're in a management type position. The other interesting thing that you can do here is that even if you've accidentally grown a monoculture within your own organization, you've inherited it, or you've inherited a team of people that are predominantly white, male, straight, as many of us here in the room are, appoint a contrarian view as well. Somebody that plays the devil's advocate, that can create discussion, create and generate an argument.
Lindsay suggested that anyone who was white male is somehow devilish in some nature.
Who invited you? We need more monoculture in this room now. And both of these things can lead to trust. And trust is the most important thing when you're in a management position. There's this old adage that trust is very, very hard to earn, but it is very easy to lose. You can build it over months, years, decades, but if you fuck up badly enough, you're going to lose the trust of the people. Lose the trust of the people, they're not going to say important things that are necessary for your personal growth and your development. You're not going to have that opportunity to be able to listen to what they say, because what they say, they're probably going to be holding something back. So trust is massively important. The most important thing when people are bearing their soul to you and telling you things that that you may not necessarily want to hear and making you feel uncomfortable, you need to be able to commit and act on anything that they come up with. You need to be able to come to a solution together about how to actually improve the situation. And generally, when people are coming to you with particular problems that they've got on a daily basis, they have some idea about how to fix that as well. So ask them. You don't necessarily know best about how to solve their particular situation, so ask them. If it's reasonable and if it's possible to actually do it, commit and act. And this is massively important for building a reputation as something that you can actually be trusted. So there's this really interesting theory that, it's a really interesting study that happened a couple of years ago, and they looked at the interpersonal relationships and the number of if somebody in that relationship did something bad and pissed off the other person, how many good acts would it take to actually make up for that? It turns out the ratio is about 5 to 1. So every time you fuck up and you make somebody feel bad, you make somebody feel uncomfortable, and you make their life difficult, you need to do at least 5 good things to be able to make up for that. And it's not passive good things as well. You actually need to make an effort. And like I said, it's trust is a thing that's very, very difficult to learn, but very easy to lose. So those 5 good things, that's going to take a while to actually do. So once you build it, you've got to be able to maintain that reputation. And that's a really, really difficult thing. You can slip up, make mistakes. By having a little bit of that trust there and having that good relationship, it's more easy to recover from that. But it's something that you need to be constantly vigilant about. The other interesting thing here is leadership versus management. And this is totally a talk in itself. But quick show of hands, well, not even show of hands, shout out. Who thinks, or what do people think is the difference between leadership and management? Do we actually know? So managers are organised and leaders are not. Okay. Typically, yeah, sure. The stereotype, sure, yeah.
Doing things right and doing the right things.
Right, so doing things right and doing the right thing. Cool.
Leaders inspire, managers impose.
Right, that's great. Leaders inspire, managers impose. It's a really good summary.
Doing and telling.
What's that, sorry?
Doing and telling.
Right, so leaders do and managers tell. Comes to that sort of like manager smart, worker dumb sort of.
Leaders don't require authority.
Leaders don't require authority. That's interesting. Okay.
Leaders are going to authority about the people they work with. It's a sort of sideways organic, so as opposed to management is more of a structured organic structure.
Right, right.
We should start taking risks versus business as usual.
Right, absolutely. Yep.
Nearsighted and short-sighted.
Right, so being nearsighted versus short-sighted.
There can be respect as well. If you've got a leader in your team, like a team leader, I think the team would bond with that person much better than they do that as well. Like a respect level.
Right.
He's one of us.
Right.
Because he's coding with us, or he's just giving us direction.
Right.
There's other guys in suits just bark orders.
Yeah.
Direction versus coordinating.
Direction, okay, so you think leaders are providing more direction, managers are providing more coordination. Yes?
Everyone's painting management in a bad light. Does that mean that nobody's ever actually had a leader, and a leader is an ideal of what they want, and a manager is what they've got?
That's a really interesting question. So quick show of hands, who feels that they've ever worked under a leader before in their professional career? Okay.
Yeah,
And who here has felt that they've predominantly worked under managers?
no.
Right, okay. Right. So it's not like a platonic ideal or anything like that. There are like a small minority of people that have actually worked in those sort of situations.
If you change that question just slightly, what about have you worked with the leader?
Ah, okay. Who here has worked with a leader before? Okay, so that's more. That's interesting.
It's a DevOps thing as well. As a system ops person, I found myself either on my own or with one other person a hell of a lot. Whereas developers usually have a good team and team leader.
Yeah. Maybe.
No, maybe. Yeah, I've just come from smaller teams.
Smaller companies. Often the two labels are incorrectly used.
Yeah.
A lot of managers doing managing the jobs, but their title is leader, or vice versa.
Right. Right. So like that impedance mismatch between what their job title says and what they actually do. Right.
What they call it.
Sometimes managers think they are leaders. They're not.
Right. And leaders, so managers think that they're leaders, but leaders very rarely think of themselves as managers.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, I would throw a different spanner in that. Sometimes people have to actually embrace the fact that they're a leader and they can't fucking manage. It's a different set of skills.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So there's totally a whole lot to talk here, but my point is that like one of the things that I've tried to improve is to have opinions about things, have some sort of direction about where the team is going, hold on to those opinions very, very strongly, but at the same time also have the flexibility to be able to change those positions quickly if the situation demands. And that's a really, really difficult thing to personal skill to be able to develop, because you sort of become very entrenched in the way that you've done something. You know, it's always worked this way, so it's always going to continue to work this way. But when you're presented with alternative evidence that suggests that maybe the way that you've been doing stuff up until now isn't the most optimal way of doing it, being able to change that is very, very difficult.
Strong opinions is step.
Comment.
Yes.
Thinking back to your earlier point, being able to change your opinion quickly and hold opinions is a fantastic way to get debate and conflict going within the team.
Yep, that's a really good point. Not necessarily the right type of conflict within the team, but
Oh, it can be.
Being a devil's
conflict
advocate, you can
management,
turn on a dime? Ah, that's just fun.
yeah, it'd be, I think probably, I don't know, maybe it would be a better problem to have having a manager that changes direction and has many opinions rather than a manager that doesn't have a direction of opinions.
Let me add what I actually meant, is have opinions on decisions about how you implement stuff and invite your team to challenge you and debate and that's it.
Right, so to be a facilitator
Yes.
of discussion and argument and conflict.
And often that takes actually volunteering as opposed to letting them sit there and things.
Yes, right. So like that's a,
Here's my premise. Shoot it down, but if you don't give a premise, no one's going to pipe up.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, and that's a really interesting point as well about sort of just team dynamics in general. We're not really covering this, but if you are on a team where people are very quiet and there's not a lot of arguing or nothing for people willing to speak out, then that either means one of two things. It either means that everyone is in perfect agreement and everyone is working in exactly, they're working for exactly the same goal, they're all heading in the same direction. Or the more likely scenario is that nobody is willing to actually pipe up because there's no trust. People don't feel that they're able to venture into the community. People fear what will happen when they actually do venture into the community. So that's a really interesting point about team dynamics right there. So are people here familiar with the Peter principle? Okay, right. So the Peter principle, for people that don't know, is that people will tend to be promoted until they reach their position of incompetence. And this is a theory that was sort of put forward in the 1960s, but it's sort of taken root very much in a lot of management literature that you find even today. Politics. Yeah, politics is another great example. The key point you need to be able to take away from this talk is that management is not a promotion within your organization. Management is a career change. It requires a completely different set of skills to the ones that you get up into. Any organization that tells you that they are promoting you to reward your previous competence without being able to back that up by facilitating and educating and teaching you about how to be a good manager is probably not an organization I would like to work for. There's this other really interesting point here as well about real work. You hear this all the time from engineers that have been promoted from an engineering position or a team leader position, and now they're into management. And at the end of the day, they've been in meetings, they've been talking with people, and they've spent barely any time at their computer, and they haven't written a single line of code or deployed a single change. And the thing that they say at the end of the day is that I've done no real work. And that's total bullshit, because management, and the slides work, is your real work. You have a career change. Your entire purpose as a manager is to facilitate conversation, to have meetings with people, solve problems, help people move in the same direction. You are starting from scratch when you go from an engineering position to a management position. And that means that you need to, in that new position, be able to understand people, learn those skills, understand how people think. A really good point there is to actually learn a bit about psychology, understand how people think, learn about things like cognitive biases, group dynamics, and also look at social psychology and that sort of thing as well. It's massively important. You need to always remember that you don't have the answers. People in your team also don't have the answers. But we can find the answers together. Thank you very much. All right, any questions? Yes.
My first experience was with management involved coming in one morning and hearing the phrase "Good morning, these people are now your people." What are your thoughts on professional development for people who are lumped with that responsibility?
If you are not professionally developing, then that is going to be a career limiting for you.
What sort of things would you encourage people to do?
Oh, okay, right. So one really useful thing that I found when I got promoted into that management position was training courses. So the Australian Institute of Management, which used to be based up in Sydney, they're now based down in George Street. Actually, no, they're just in Circular Quay, actually. They do a whole bunch of very short and sharp training courses and refresher courses. They've got a fantastic website. You can find all the different ones. So I did a Leading People Effectively course, but they have all sorts of interesting courses about running distributed teams, managing and facilitating conflict, that sort of thing. And yeah, you basically need to make a very hard sell there. It's like promoting, being in an engineering position and being promoted into a management position. It's like hiring somebody fresh out of school with very, very little understanding about how to actually do the engineering work. So what are you going to do when you hire an engineer into that position? You're going to send them off into training courses. Make sure that they can become educated, throw them in the deep end, help them along. You need to be able to do exactly the same thing in management.
But did those spur your curiosity? Like doing those early on, did they spur your curiosity about other things?
No, actually. Well, no, a little bit. I guess that I went along to that training course because I wanted to be sort of a buddy for somebody else that was going along to that as well. And I genuinely didn't think that I would get a lot out of it. Maybe. I'm not getting any commission for saying anything. Rob.
wanted to try and have a go at management basically, and a very low risk scenario that I'm doing complete career track change, and it's incredibly high risk and all that sort of stuff. And I helped out start an annual event. So basically, I had a collection of a couple of guys there, and I was effectively their manager. And in combination with trying things out across reading Rains and Repose, if anyone hasn't heard of it, it's a really, really good read. It really helped me out. And that could be on sort of a low risk way of trying to get into management as a thing just by helping start a thing in your own time.
Yeah, being involved in community organisations and that sort of thing really equipped me with a lot of the skills that I've used in management. So being involved in open source for a very long period of time, I've been involved in things like running the DevOps meetups. I was very heavily involved in the Linux users group, that sort of thing. A lot of the skills that I sort of picked up completely by accident by being involved in the organisation of those things definitely translated through to moving my job around.
You've been very kind not to mention you counter examples from me during LCA.
Yeah, possible.
Polite of you.
But I mean, that's another really interesting point as well. A very, very large part about how I go about leading the team now and just being a member of the team is informed by absolutely terrible experiences that I've had in the past.
Thanks.
I wasn't specifically talking about it. Sure, if you want to admit to it. Yes, Jim.
I wanted to offer some other suggestions in answer to Jeff's. Rands and Repose was already mentioned, which I wanted to bring up, which is a really awesome blog about a guy who is a manager of engineers. And it's an amazing blog, so you should all read it. The other one, which is really awesome, is get Lindsay a beer and have a chat with him.
That's not a book.
Are you going to get commission for that?
I might get a
Yeah, I've got a bunch of books that I can recommend as well. I'll post them on the DevOps website. The DevOps meetup again. Matt.
Yeah, another interesting way to get yourself introduced to managing a team is volunteer to run a project, lead a project within your group. You find that you get a pretty interesting introduction to setting deadlines and figuring out how work is laid out. You also get a good introduction to motivating people and getting them interested in moving in the right direction.
Yeah, project management is a really gentle way of dipping your toe in the water for that. It's relatively low risk when you.
Not that kind of project management.
It's relatively low risk when you consider it. If you're in a team leadership position and you fuck up, then people underneath you may leave, and that's a problem. Whereas in a project, then people know that there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel if you make any significant mistakes. They are going to be able to eventually get off that project on the green path as well. You can hopefully learn and improve from that experience. Yes?
Yeah, spoke about management more from the practical point of view, manager to workers.
Yep.
Now, what about managers to managers? Especially in the DevOps area when they're trying to communicate better to have a better release process and so on. So what are your thoughts about that?
So communicating with other managers
Yes.
is hypothetically at the same level in the org structure or people above?
At the same level.
That is an interesting question. It's something that I am doing lots of research around at the moment. But the practical research and experimentation, real world experimentation. The interesting thing there, which I didn't really realize up until about a year ago, was that being a manager in a larger organization with other managers at the same level as me in Yorkshire, I'm actually a member of two teams. I'm a member of my team, and I'm also a member of a management team. And most people don't really realize that or even internalize that at all. And so I've spent the last 3 years working on building what I hope to be an enjoyable culture within our team. But I've absolutely neglected growing a similar sort of culture with other people in my team at the management level. So I think a lot of the similar things can, listening, empathy, trust. These are all massively important. It doesn't matter who you're working with, if they are underneath you on an org chart, same level or above. But it's something that we quite often neglect when we're promoting to those positions. Yes.
just something that I find quite useful, for the group. Whenever you are, especially when you're working sort of cross peer, or you've recently sort of inherited a team of people, there's a book called Personality Plus. And I'm trying not to sound like Tom Cruise as I tell you about this from a Scientology perspective.
Jump on the couch, that'll help.
Yes. It just basically explains about four different sort of predominant personality types and how they generally like to receive information. So whenever you learn to identify the different sorts of people that you're working with, because as Lindsay says, it's all about diversity in the team. So you're going to have people that wear pink shirts and get the microphone and start jumping up and down in front. They don't need the same the delivery of information in the same way that people are generally classified as melancholics, for example. They're all about detail and get down into the individual subtasks. If you were to tell me about tasks and subtasks and subtasks and subtasks, you just get this glazed expression as every Scotsman was discussing cricket, for example. But like if you tell me about all the results and what it's all going to look like at the end of it all, you'll get me really enthused. Whereas, if you're dealing with somebody like a choleric, which is somebody like, get the hell out of the way because this is the way we're going to do it, then you deliver the information in a different fashion. And you will, without wanting to sound manipulative, you'll be able to, to use that phrase to win friends and influence people. What's the name of the book? It's called Personality Plus by Florence Littauer. It's just been really useful for me, not only from like a professional perspective, but whenever you're dealing with people. I work in consulting, so you're dealing with all sorts of different types of people, and it's the same rules. It's all about learning rather than what can you get out of them. It's all about how can you serve, and by taking that attitude and learning how to communicate with those people, you'll definitely win favour. You get the trust comes on an awful lot more quickly, and I promise I'll get off my soapbox really quickly. Sorry about that. Anyway, hope that helps. One way I would reverse that around and use that to steer people into communicating with you in your optimal way. Yeah, absolutely. And as long as you get it on the table, then everybody understands everybody. You don't else. have to actually sit there and say, I learned this way. You can kind of steer in that way with that. Absolutely. It's all about being able to influence, but also let those people know what you're up to as well, so they can learn to adapt their style as well. Because everybody doesn't communicate in the same way.
Cater the message to the receiver. Marketing 101.
Yeah.
Know your audience.
Still go.
Yeah.
Hey, that's very interesting one. Certainly from my statistically non-valid sample of managers, I think you might be the exception. Finding a structure in which there is a manager such as you might be difficult. So I have like a question from the other side. I have absolutely no will to become a manager in the future, but I would like to find the leverage to actually turn an average or bad manager into a good manager. Is there something I can sell to the structure? It's a LSD. Is there something to like the manager in the right direction?
If you can find a way to do that, holy fuck, you will be so rich.
Sounds like what's roasters and
Poison them and get a new
I think in that particular situation, like managing up is one of the most important skills that you can learn. It doesn't matter what sort of job you're doing. The counterpoint to that is that I'm going to sound very spiritual here, but change can only come from within. The people, seriously, if the people that you're having problems with aren't willing to even identify and acknowledge that there was a problem in the first place, have a little bit of self-reflection, you're not going to be able to change anything.
They tend also to have like a bigger salary, more responsibility, and maybe make the lead. That's kind of tough, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's that whole thing there about class.
Sorry, just on that point really quickly. All of these lessons here about managing workers apply to managing up as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's managing 360 degrees. All right, Shane.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've got 2 more points stuck with me all my life a while ago, and that's to everyone's sort of identified that a great manager is not a great leader. And 2 things I think was told me a long time ago that to be a great leader is trust and knowledge, people's respect. You have people's respect, obviously you're going to follow you, and that's obviously the sign of a leader. So I think it's very powerful. It's not always been the nicest guy here to have someone's trust. I think you can see that with Steve Jobs, for instance. People trusted him, even though I watch Jobs, I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems like a bit of an asshole sometimes. They still trusted him because they knew he was consistent in his behaviour and how he treated people. And they trusted him in the way that they could get the results as a manager, the way that they could treat. So trust, knowledge, I think people's respect, and a great leader.
We should totally have a discussion about this afterwards, but Steve is a total outlier. Like he is so divisive and so polarizing, especially in management circles as well. So there's this professor at Stanford who I read a lot of stuff from. His name's Bob Sutton. He gave a talk in China only about a year or 2 ago. And at the end of it, he has a lot of really interesting insights into management, leadership, motivating people, that sort of thing. And at the end of it, there was this row that broke out amongst all these sort of C-level executives and mid-level managers from all these major Chinese engineering firms. And it was all about whether Steve Jobs was actually a good, it's a moral judgment of whether he was a good leader or a bad leader. And he sort of hung around for a little bit, and there was a translator that was sort of feeding excerpts of the conversation. And after about sort of 10 minutes, he thought, okay, well, this conversation could go for a while, so I'm going to leave. And so he came back. He left, and he came back about an hour and a half later, and the conversation had increased in intensity so much that it was like bordering on like a full-out brawl. Steve Jobs is a very polarizing influence. I think that he is a very unique individual, and it would be next to impossible to be able to replicate the sort of things that he was able to do in his management style.
Just an interesting side point. An effective leader, an effective manager isn't necessarily a good manager. You look at Jack Chainsaw, whatever his last name was at GE. He was a pretty famous asshole. Bob Sutton writes it out. He was very effective at turning very large profits at GE, but everyone hated working for him.
All right. Sort of been going on for a while, and people probably need to go home and start catching trains. But thank you all for coming. If you want to chat, just stay around.